Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another edition of Freedom Friday. This is the Friday after Independence Day edition. I pray that all is well. I'm turning up my volume. All right. I pray that all is well. I know some of you will catch this on the replay. I know you're probably enjoying your Friday. I got a busy Friday ahead of me, but I dare not show up for this edition of Freedom Friday because of so much that has happened this week. But before I go any further, I need for you to like, share, and tag someone in this episode because this is going to be a conversation. We cannot cover it all in the few minutes that we're going to have this together to this morning. But I believe this is going to spark a much deeper conversation that I want to have with this engaging community because I believe that what has happened this week has changed America forever. Some of you saying, well, Dr. Eric, I don't know what happened. We're going to get into it really quickly. I can't say it all on this platform, but I do know this, that this is a moment in time. Everybody that you know that can vote needs to be registered, have an ID, and show up to the polls. Because this is a conversation, a moment in time that we can't miss. This week, we saw something take place that has changed us. It has caused many of us to really ponder the question, what really is America? And how do we see it? The ruling granting former President Trump some immunity from his official action poses a significant risk to Black America. It undermines accountability. It threatens civil rights protection. It increases the risk of authoritarian government. It weakens our judicial system. And it could encourage discriminatory policies. This potential outcome highlights the urgent need for vigilant and advocacy to safeguard democratic principles and ensure the rights of the marginalized communities are protected. So, what can we do as a community, as a people, as the church? Number one, we have to understand the voting rights and how it came to be. We can no longer be ignorant as it relates to our rights and history. And I think this is one of the things that we engage in conversation with people, not fully understanding and knowing what history has said, what history has developed, how it has morphed over time, and what we can do on this side of history. So the 13th and the 14th and the 15th Amendment abolished slavery. It granted citizenship, and it prohibited racial discrimination in voting, marking the dawn of a new era of African Americans. The Jim Crow era. Despite these amendments, Jim Crow systematically disenfranchised Black voters, listen to this, through literacy tests, poll taxes, violence, and setting back the progress for decades. And so many of you are saying to me that Black voters, through the literacy tests, if they could not read, they couldn't vote. They didn't know poll tax, they couldn't vote. The other thing is, if you could not count the number of jelly beans in the jar, you could not vote. Look it up. Know your history. So this potentially could set us back decades. What the Supreme Court justice put in place set us back 250 years. See, what you don't seem to understand, they want us to go back. They don't want us to move forward. But what they failed to understand, the same people they had 250 years ago are not the same people they have today. See, many of us today, we're going to fight back. We're not going to sit and let you just change policy and change history right before our very eyes. You cannot remain ignorant to what are my rights. Reading is fundamental. A friend of mine said that many people read, but they don't comprehend. And we call that today a learning disability. Don't be ignorant because you read history, but you don't comprehend history. Understand there is a system in place to devalue, to erase history as if it never existed. Black America, Black church, I need for you to make sure you understand your history. Growing up in the Black church for me was not only a social gathering, but we learned history. We didn't just do Black history, we were Black history. We didn't just show up for February, give a speech as if history never was written. We were Black history. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I went to a predominantly all-white high school. But my mom made sure that we were involved in Black history, meaning we were involved in a program called Saturday Academy. It was a program at North Carolina A&T State University, HBCU, which I'm a proud alumni of. But every Saturday morning, we got up, and before STEM was STEM, we learned math, science, technology, and English. We were learning this before STEM became STEM. Every Saturday morning, I went to A&T, and we were learning the basic fundamentals of science, English, and math, and technology. We were learning science. We went up on the top of the science building there at A&T, and we learned astronomy. We were learning the basic pronoun, verb, adjective combination of English. So we had professors at A&T and retired professors and retired teachers that came every Saturday morning, every Saturday morning, and taught us. My mother was going to make sure that we were not ignorant. Just because we were in an all-white environment, we were going to know our history. And I am the better because I was in an engaging community where we learned. Some of you are all in Greensboro, North Carolina. You remember Saturday Academy with Dr. Castello. Y'all remember that we were in that environment and we learned. It was fun. We had our Krispy Kreme donuts. We had our snacks, but we learned. Number 3, the Civil Rights Movement. In 1960, we saw the rise of a powerful movement where leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis were marching for equality, culminating into the history of Selma and the Montgomery marches. You see, there were people who died for you to vote. And for me to hear our young people and even some older people say, I don't feel like my vote is going to matter. And I often tell people, and I want you to hear me on this, we really don't have much to talk about when you come to me and say, no, I didn't vote because I don't really think it's going to matter. It's going to matter if you don't vote. And let me say, might I add this for the record? People died, I'm going to say it again, for you to vote. They weren't just marching for 1960s. They were marching for 2024. They were marching for 2025. They were marching so that Barack Obama could be the first African-American president to take that office on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and ride that helm out for 8 years. It didn't just happen overnight. 1960s, and even before that, they marched for the right to vote. So when you tell me I'm not voting because it doesn't matter, you and I don't have anything to talk about. Because if you can't vote or you don't want to vote, you're telling me you don't know your history and you're going to remain ignorant to the fact of what really is important to our rights. Number 5, the contemporary challenge. Today we face threats like voter ID laws, gerrymandering, demanding our vigilance of activism to protect the hard-won rights. Now, I use some terminology some of you may not understand, but I need for you to go and understand. I'm not going to give you definitions today. I want you to look them up. Look up gerrymandering. Look up the word activism, because I need for you to understand how important it was for us to understand our rights and how, if we do not vote in this election, we see ourselves going back 250 years. So to address the urgency of voting rights in the context of the Black church and the Black community, we have to understand that historically, the Black church has been on the front line. We have always been on the front line historically when it comes to the voting rights. So you don't have the right to sit back and say, I don't think my vote matters. I need for you, if you're 18 and older, and you're going to catch this on replay, I need for you to share it with every millennial, every individual who has voted high school this year, and you're 18, and you're going to turn 18 before November. I need you registered. Don't tell me it's not going to matter. It's going to affect your education. Your right to get student loans will be affected in this vote. Your right to a public education and the HBCU, what just happened this week, is going to affect if you do not vote. Your right to get a job and not face the discriminatory actions and the policies that come along with that is going to affect you if you do not vote. I do hope that the Democratic policies that we have in place and those that are elected officials that are right now in Senate and in Congress, that you do not sit back and you let what the Supreme Court justices did this week erase our history, because you have decided we're going to wait until we're going to see who's going to be elected. We don't have time for that. Listen to me. We do not have time to wait to see who's going to become president. Listen, what's going to happen now will forever change the landscape of our history. So for you to sit back and say it doesn't matter, you're saying to ourselves that I don't understand my right. But I'm going to leave you with a text of scripture. I'm going to always leave you with scripture, because I am the Black church. You are the Black church. Amos 5:24 says, but let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like a never failing stream. In the context of this text, Amos was saying, he was one of the 12 minor prophets of the Old Testament. Amos was a shepherd farmer. He was called to God to prophesy to the northern kingdom of Israel, and during a time of economic prosperity, but there was a moral and spiritual decay. Despite their wealth, the Israelites were guilty of social injustice, religious hypocrisy, and neglect for the poor and the vulnerable. So what was Amos saying in this scripture? He was saying that we have to stand up against condemnation of injustice. There's a call for true worship in the text. And so the relevancy of now from Amos 5:24, that says, but let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like a never failing stream. Just as Amos condemned social injustice of his time, we are called to stand against modern injustice and systematic racism and economic inequality. Moral integrity, active advocacy, and faith in action. Amos 5:24 is a powerful call to pursue justice and righteousness relentlessly. In the context of our struggle of voting rights and social equity, this verse reminds us that true worship and faith are demonstrated through our commitment to justice. And as we continue to fight for righteousness for all people, let justice roll on like a river and righteousness like a never failing stream. Enduring our efforts are as enduring an unstoppable call or a call to justice. We cannot, we shall not, and we will not let our voices be silent because we feel as if our vote doesn't matter. You have an obligation, you have a responsibility to vote in this upcoming election. Don't let it be said among the Black community that we didn't know. I'm going to do more lives, more in-depth lives as it relates to voting and the social inequality that we're facing against the marginalized people. Because I believe that as a Black community, we are marginalized and we're going to face a substantial loss if we don't vote. So I want to call every person to the carpet, to the floor this morning. If you're going to catch this on a replay, I need for you to understand that you are part of the solution. And if you do not vote in this election, shame on you. But you and I, we have no conversation because I can't vote with someone who's ignorant concerning what is their rights. Do not rely on other people to tell you your rights. I need for you to pick up a book and read. I need for you to understand the law, understand policy. See, it's no longer just, but you need to understand policy. Project 2025, I'm going to do a live on it soon. You need to understand it's going to affect us more than we ever know. But if you don't know the policy, you don't know the law, shame on you. Read it and understand that in this season, we have an obligation to cast our ballot and to show up in November and let your voice be heard. Because one day, if we don't do it, somebody's going to pull the voice and the covers over our head, and they're going to be marching again with sheets. But this time, don't cover your face, white America. Keep your sheet off your head. Let us see your face. You no longer have to do that. White privilege says, I can vote, or I can march, and I can do hate crimes because I'm white America, not on my watch. Because on my watch, I'm going to call you out. I'm going to go toe-to-toe with you. I ain't make it 50 years, almost 51 years, for you to tell me that my voice doesn't matter. No, it's not going to happen. I know some of you probably saying, who is this lady? She's radical this morning. See, this week it stirred something in me. I'm a poli-sci major. My degree is political science. And so some of you getting ready to see this poli-sci come out of me over the next couple of months because I'm enraged by what happened. I was angered this week. There was a righteous indignation that stood up at me saying, how can we allow this America that we know to change the America that I am used to? Not going to happen on my watch. Who will join me? If you'll join me in the comments, say, I'm going to join you. And we're going to come back for more lives like this throughout the month, throughout the couple of weeks, because I want you to be a part of a changing generation. This is a season. You've got to vote. I want to leave you with this. There are some radical people who change laws. Let us be the same people that's going to change policy. Policy is the key to change. If you change a policy, the law has to change. I'm glad we had this time together to engage in this conversation. I didn't mean to go this long, but I want us to understand what is at stake and what you need to do in this next election. As my motto says every Friday, Love is what love does. But if no one's told you today, let me be the first to tell you I love you. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Live life and live life on purpose. Have an amazing Friday. I believe today something good is going to happen to you. Be blessed.